Hi, and welcome to an introduction to Microsoft Cognitive Services. My name is Rami Sayar. I'm a developer evangelist at Microsoft Canada based in Montreal, and I'll be walking you through cognitive services today, showing you how to build really intelligent applications and sort of add that machine learning magic, that AI magic to your app. One of the best ways to reach out to me if you've got any questions or just any comments is through my Twitter. I'm at Rami Sayar on Twitter, and I'll be happy to respond to any question that you might send me. So hello and welcome. Microsoft Cognitive Services are basically a collection of APIs that allow you to add intelligence to your applications. So if you think about it, it's basically pre-trained machine learning models that do a certain task that you can add to your application. And there's a whole bunch of different APIs, and I'll walk you through them. Some of the APIs that are out there are all focused around vision. So think of being able to recognize what are in images, maybe even recognize a face, being able to do some emotions analysis, being able to find out if someone's happy or sad. So those are the vision APIs that are available in Cognitive Services. There's also a bunch of speech APIs, so you can do things like speech recognition or text-to-speech or even understanding and recognizing who's speaking. So if you have more than two people in an audio stream, you can know who's speaker one, who's speaker two. And there's a whole bunch of powerful things you can do with the speech APIs. There's also language APIs that sort of let you understand some of the sentences or text that has been sent. You can recognize whether a text is positive, for example, using the text analytics API. And you can even extract like entities from a sentence, so to be able to recognize different pieces of a sentence using the language understanding APIs. It's a very powerful set of tools for helping you build a chatbot, for example. And we've got a bunch of other search APIs as well as some knowledge APIs to sort of be able to extract really interesting things from a sentence or from text. And essentially, the Cognitive Services is all of these API sets. So what I actually want to demo with you today is the Emotion API. So if I click on the Emotion API, it'll actually take me to a page that has a bunch of different things on here. There's a Get Started for Free button that will actually show you how to get started. And then there's documentation, an API reference, and the SDK that you could use as well. So what the Emotion API does is it lets you recognize emotions and images. Now, we can't score an emotion entirely. So what the model actually does is it scores basically what level of certainty it thinks that like this face has this emotion. So let's say that we're looking at this face right here. Well, then the model can basically figure out whether it is angry, there is some contempt, some disgust, some happiness, some sadness, some fear, maybe a neutrality in the face, some surprise, and it will score it from 0 to 1 what it thinks that face is exhibiting at that moment. Okay. So to get started with any of the cognitive services, you need to actually sign in. And one of the ways to do that is you just click up here and press sign in. I've already signed in, so it'll actually take me to my account. Now, when you sign in for the first time, you'll be basically asked to request a bunch of new trials. So what these trials let you do is to give you access to a specific API. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down here and actually click on the Emotion API. Scroll all the way to the bottom. I agree to the terms and services. You guys should read the terms and services before you agree to them. I've already read them, so I agree to them. And I'm going to press subscribe. So when I subscribe, that's going to add that API to my account. And what I'll see here is the next time I go into my account, I'll notice I've got my free subscriptions, the Emotion, I have a description of how many transactions I can do per month, so how many times I can call that API, and I have keys that I can use to actually do API calls. So the next thing that I want to do is I actually want to go back into my API and sort of show you a little bit of the documentation, and then I'm going to do a sample call using the API documentation. So if I go into the API reference, you'll notice I'm on Project Oxford. I've got my Emotion API, and you'll see that this API actually has several different ones associated with it. So the Emotion API has the sort of standard emotion recognition API, and it also has other APIs that sort of have a little bit of a twist on them. So the first one is recognition with video, so in video, and the other one is if you give it a bunch of face rectangles, for example, and it will recognize all of these the emotions of these specific face rectangles. So the one that I'm going to demo right now is the emotion recognition API. And what you'll notice is that there's a couple of restrictions on the API itself. So first, it only supports images that are JPEG, PNG, GIFs, and BMPs. And the file can't be bigger than 4 megabytes. And it also detects faces from the size range of 36 to 30 by 36 pixels to 4096 by 4096 pixels. The URL that you're going to use to hit this API is actually this one right here. And there's a couple of things that you're going to need here. You're going to need to specify a content type in the header and the subscription key. So to actually just get the subscription key, we need to go back to our My Accounts page. And if I go back in there, you'll notice that there was 2 keys that I could use. Okay, so I'm going to show you my key. I'm going to copy it, so I'll have it in my clipboard. And by the way, I'm going to regenerate this key afterwards, so don't bother copying it down because it won't be valid after this video is shot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy it, and it's going to show me that key right here. And I'm going to go back to this tab right here, so to continue. You'll notice here that now that I've copied my key, that's the key that I'm going to use in this request header right here. The other thing you're going to want to do in the request body is either pass it in some JSON, okay, and then you could specify in the content type that you're passing in the JSON. And what this JSON is going to contain is a URL to the image that you want the API to recognize. The alternative is you can actually pass it some application/octet stream. So this is the actual image data itself. So you don't have to upload the image somewhere and pass the URL. You can just give it the image right away. And this API, what it's going to do is going to return a JSON. First, it's going to tell you this is the face rectangle that I recognize. And then for that rectangle, I'm going to score it with these different metrics, these different emotions. So here, the API is saying that it believes this picture is actually fairly happy. It's 0.98 out of 1, which is the highest of all of these values right here. So it's fairly confident that it's displaying happiness. If you don't get a response that has a JSON, you'll notice you'll get a bunch of different status codes, and what you'll notice here is an explanation of what these status codes mean. At the bottom, you'll have different code samples. So you'll notice that there's one for curl, C#, Java, JavaScript, PHP, Python. All of these are sample code that you can copy paste into your applications, and you're able to immediately work with this API. Now, if you look at the JavaScript one, you'll notice that it's one that assumes that you're running inside a browser. I'm actually going to show you sample code that lets you run this, do this API call using Node.js, and I'll do that in a second. What I do want to show you first instead is that you can actually test this API using the API testing console. So I'm going to click on that, and what this is going to pop up is it's going to show me this basically this new page that lets me specify the value. So here, if you remember, I copied the subscription key. I'm just going to paste it in there. And one of the things that I want to do is I want to actually recognize a picture of me and tell me what emotion that I'm showing in that picture. So I just went through my Twitter account. I looked for a bunch of different images, and I saw this one of myself. It's a selfie that I took at Build. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the image address, go back into my cognitive services, and replace this URL with a URL from Twitter. So that's what that is. And then I could send this request. You can see the entire request is going to be sent right here. So I'm going to send this. It's going to tell me response OK. It was fairly quick, and it recognized that I'm pretty much pretty happy. So I don't know about you, but if I look at this picture, I'm smiling, my eyes are open, I'm clearly happy here. So the API was fairly accurate in recognizing happiness. So that's how you can play around with the API using the documentation website itself. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to actually show it to you using Node.js. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my command line. I've got this folder already created. There's one thing that you're going to want to install, and that is npm install requests. I've already installed it, so you don't need to watch me do that, but you're going to want to do that yourself. Just do make sure that you do have a package.json file in there already, and you can actually create one by just doing npm init. And you're able to actually create a package.json right away. So once I've got that installed, I'm going to go into my editor here, and I'm using Visual Studio Code. And what you'll notice is I've already created a file called emotion.js, and here's my package.json that mostly contains a dependency of request. Okay, so that's pretty much there. So I'm going to go into my emotion.js. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to request this require this library called request. And what this library does, and I'll just show you their GitHub page, it just makes it really simple for you to do API calls. So you can do HTTP calls, HTTPS calls, it'll even follow the redirects for you. It just makes life a lot easier. You don't have to use the HTTP module, you can just use the request module, and it'll make things a lot cleaner in your code as well. So I go back to my code here. What I'm doing is I'm doing a request call. I'm passing in a bunch of options, and inside these options I've specified the method being a post, the URL, so this is the Project Oxford URL, and a couple of headers. So you'll notice here's my subscription key. This is actually out of date. I'm going to paste I'm actually going to go back into here, copy this URL, go back into my Visual Studio Code and paste it in there. Oh, it's actually the same one. And the thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to need to pass in a body. So I do that by setting the body property, and it needs to be a JSON string. So I'm going to JSON stringify this object that has a URL to the image of my face. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pass a callback that just accepts error, response, and body. And what you'll notice here is I'm checking to see if the response status code is 200, so it's A-OK. And then if it is, I actually parse the JSON that's passed in as a body, into the body as a string. So I'm going to parse that into an object, and then I'm just going to print out that object onto the command line. So if I take this code and I go back into my command line and I run node emotion.js, here I actually get the end result from my API call, and that is that yes, I'm showing the same result. I am very happy in that picture. So that's pretty much it when it comes to using the Cognitive Services API. All the other APIs have a very similar process. You need to add them in your subscription, and then you can send them an API call. You can use Node. There's lots of documentation, so you can actually see some of the other APIs as well, and you're able to basically do anything that you need to do, whether it's recognize images, recognize faces, do face tracking in video, do speech recognition, and there's a whole wealth of intelligence that you can add to your application. So that's it for our video, a very quick video. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. And if you're attending the Microsoft Hacks in the University of Toronto, I'll be around. I'll be a judge as well, so I'll be there to help you out with your apps and your hacks, and hope you have a wonderful development experience while you're there.